A dramatic weekend as the penultimate round delivered in spades. We had teams drop the ball while others took their opportunities. There's so much to unpack, so let's get straight into it. This is Access All Areas thanks to Crypto.com.
And the Blues just keep on rolling. And who knows when it'll stop.
Goal! Celebration of the G because it's off the boot of Jack.
Bang for the goal. He's got it. No, it's touched the post.
The joy of victory is there for this West Coast Eagles, this proud club. So soak it in.
Happy Monday. Great to have your company. Damian Barrett and Matthew Lloyd are with me. Welcome, gents. Good to see you both.
You too.
Let's get straight into it because we've got plenty to cover, and we'll start with the shocking upset that happened at Marvel Stadium yesterday. The Eagles beating the Dogs by 7 points. And Lloydie, what was the most disappointing part of all of this from a Bulldogs perspective?
With so much at stake, I think just to dream opposition to play the West Coast Eagles, who'd just been belted by over 100 points the week before, and they started so poorly. They were out-hunted, they were outworked, and then they were on the back foot right from the start. They were able to rebound, but then the West Coast Eagles found a way again. But just so many players that just have gone backwards in their football. A lot of people talking about what's happened to Jack McRae, what's happened to Bailey Smith. You know, why is Aaron Norton? Why can't he be the player we all hoped he'd be? You know, the list goes on and on with individuals at the Western Bulldogs.
And you need to revisit why did Just Dunkley want to, in consecutive seasons of footy, try to get out of the place when he was under contract. And then you line up with the result yesterday, Nat, that being against West Coast, which hadn't been able to win at all this year effectively. And then you lose to the 16th place team, Hawthorn, the previous week as well. You're leaving yourself with a scenario you need to go to Geelong to actually just have a chance to make the finals, and that's not even a guarantee if they do.
Yeah, well, obviously Luke Beveridge, the coach, was very disappointed after the game. He was asked questions about the Dogs list and his coaching future. Let's take a listen.
On the outside, it seems like the list looks like a list that should be playing finals and should be playing finals comfortably.
Yeah, well, you guys, I mean, you can only assess our list based on what you see. You're looking at our whole list. You're looking at players who have been influential in the past. Is your knowledge of the game, I suppose, sophisticated enough to understand that it takes more than a handful, that you've got to play to your 22 and 23 at this level. And if at the moment we're in this sort of static area from a performance point of view, we'll work out why it is. But from a leadership perspective and coaching the team and the club, yeah, I'm really comfortable with my tenure. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, shutting that down, that media conference, and not wanting to engage too significantly in that line of questioning, Lordo, regardless of what happens next week, win or lose, and make finals or don't make finals, that they do need to properly now analyse where they're at and how Luke Beveridge has been, I feel, allowed to have full control of lots of operations way outside his actual charter of football in that club.
Yeah, that was really interesting because once the blame game starts happening, you're in a bit of trouble. I'm seeing a coach there who says, I've got a handful of good players, but you got to look at my 22, and he's questioning the depth of the players. So suddenly, I think he's saying, oh yeah, I've got Bontempelli and I've got a few others, but I'm not sure the depth of the list is as good as everyone thinks it is.
What does that do inside a footy club when you are actually having a demarcation of sorts? It's not my problem, it's someone else's who's not giving me the players. What does that do?
The year I was at the Bombers helping Joe Danaher with his kicking, I saw the blame start there where fitness was being questioned by some. Then others were blaming the development, others were blaming the foot skills, others were blaming James Hird as the coach. And I knew this is all going to turn pear-shaped, which it did, and then everyone lose their jobs, and some survive, some go. And that's what could potentially happen at the Western Bulldogs with how things are going.
And one other thing too, look, they've convinced themselves as a club that they don't walk around eggshells around Luke Beveridge, but they do and they have. And with 8 completed seasons, when you've got the team to the grand final twice as he does, you need to actually factor that in positively. But you then have another situation where for now 9 seasons they haven't made top 4, which is every club's aim at the start of every season. So it does need to be pulled apart and started again with or without Luke Beveridge.
Okay, we'll watch this space on that one. Let's Let's talk about the Eagles, though, because it was an incredible win, in particular to bounce back from the loss the week before. The coach had been under so much pressure. It does mean, though, Damo, that they've given up the #1 pick in Harley Reid. What does this also mean for Adam Simpson's future?
Well, it's another line of thought, isn't it? I mean, that we know the board now has for about 6 weeks been deeply analysing what that means with that man on screen. Does he coach into the future? Does he start the remaining 2 years of his contract or not? And the loss to Fremantle the previous week was horrendous from that perspective for him. But to be able to bring that team to Melbourne and get the job done, and then you factor in the past month, they've had 2 wins out of those 4 games, and another game they lost by a point to Essendon. So it's positive in that regard. I don't think it changes what they were going to do and what they will do, but it's positive. But in terms of the #1 draft pick now going to North Melbourne for a 3rd consecutive season, there should be, I feel, an AFL rule brought in to not allow a club to get access to 3 in a row, Lord. I mean, if you can't fix yourself after 2, you don't deserve a 3rd one, and it's not going to fix North Melbourne. And I hope there's no smugness attached to now having control over Harley Reid's future, because they don't deserve it, North Melbourne, on the back of West Coast's win yesterday.
And then there's obviously the compensation, potentially, if they lose Ben Mackay. Could that be pick 2, essentially, which seems overs for mine?
No, and again, the herbs and spices will allow that to play out regardless, but it will be now pick 2 overall if indeed that is the compensation attached. And I don't think that should happen either, given this club has got itself into its own problems. North Melbourne, I'm referring to, through its own mediocrity in football operations.
It's a big call, though, Damo, taking #1 off a team.
As a rule, I'm talking about a discussion beyond this year, but Lotto, this is the 4th year they've either finished last or second last on a ladder.
But still shouldn't change them getting the first draft.
I'm not saying they're going to change it this year, but it should be a discussion for the competition outside of this year, because Lotto, the actual access to talent is not their problem. Retaining the talent and developing it, and maybe even identifying it.
That's the club's problem, that they can't fix themselves, but it shouldn't change the whole way we do the draft.
Well, no club has finished 3 years in a row like this.
That's their problem.
Yeah, but it's also been a competition problem, and if they get the compensation for another player wanting to leave them, that's a competition problem.
Yeah. Just going back to Adam Simpson briefly, the West Coast coach, he was interviewed straight after the game by the host broadcaster, and I quite liked his response here.
Simo, bit of relief, but there should be some excitement about the well-executed plan coming into today.
Yeah, we tried to tank that the last 3 minutes. It didn't work. I kept on saying kick it the other way and play equalised game.
Didn't mind that drive-by.
They say coaches don't follow the media or listen to it, but we can see they do.
They do.
He wasn't happy. Yeah.
Was it more at Nathan Buckley or Craig Hutchison?
Maybe Hutchie.
So there is 1 round to go. So many twists and turns. This season has been absolutely amazing. This is the ladder, so it's going to go down to the wire. It really is. There's 1 place up for grabs left in the top 8. It's between the Giants, the Dogs. Essendon, you feel, is probably unlikely because they can't make up that percentage against the Pies. So Lloydie and Damo, who gets in?
I'm hoping it's the Giants because they are in great form. They've won, I think, 7 of their last 8 games. The Bulldogs are in free fall since halfway through the season. So, but it's up there for the Dogs to beat Geelong. Geelong aren't in a great position, are they?
Yeah, and the Giants obviously got a tough game themselves against Carlton. I see it the same way, but it's a guess, isn't it, at this stage, obviously?
Yeah.
And a lot of the impact and, I suppose, excitement about round 24 in advance of it was sucked out of it.
I know it was. It's
by what we're about to
isn't
talk
it?
about.
Yeah, it really is. And this is unfortunate for Adelaide because their season is now done after they lost to the Sydney Swans in controversial circumstances. Now, I'm sure we've all seen this, the goal that wasn't called a goal. It was the no-score review. What have you made of this whole situation, Damo, and how it's played out?
A debacle and a shambles, and it played out the only way it could play out, and that is the AFL Chief Executive Officer, Gillon McLachlan, yesterday coming out very quickly publicly to admit error, that incident, that goal decision should have been referred to the technology, the arc, and had it been, it would have been adjudicated a goal, and it would have been a situation with 50, 60 seconds, 70 seconds left for Swans to then retrieve that result, not to try and defend their 1 point lead. So that's what you can do after the event, but the fact the process and human error was not adhered to is the issue.
And the Crows obviously putting out a statement as well in amongst all of this, with Tim Silver's saying the failure to video review the scoring attempt in question is inexplicable given the enormity of the moment. I mean, the Crows fans in particular, Lloydie, are not going to forget this one anytime soon.
No, they won't. So disappointing. Yeah, so disappointing. I think for the ramifications aren't just for the Crows, it's across the whole competition with positions and what could have happened for other teams as well. So that was, in a sense, the Doggies losing yesterday saved the face a little bit, because St Kilda were meant to be locked in the 8. That wasn't the case.
Yep.
Carlton were meant to have locked in a home final. That wasn't going to be the case. So the ramifications weren't just on that game. It was across the whole competition.
So that one decision aside, if you do look at the Crows' final term, they will be ruining so many opportunities because they were peppering, they were coming at them. They kicked 4-8 in the last quarter against the Swans. And this is their inaccuracy, Lloydie, throughout the season. They've cost themselves.
They have, and they've got such amazing players down there. You know, Tex Walker, Fogarty, Rankin, Rochelle. So it's not as if they should be missing that many. I know those players aren't to blame for that, but they've had a good year without going on with it, the Crows. So
it could have been a special year.
It could have been, yeah. So let's hope they can go on with it next year and push on from these disappointments.
So let's get to Melbourne now, and they have shored up a top 4 spot after shaking off Hawthorn yesterday. It was an enthralling contest, in particular the matchup between Hawthorn tagger Finn McGuinness and Clayton Oliver was really intriguing, and coach Simon Goodwin had this to say after the game.
He's dealt with attention for 7 years, so it's nothing new for him. Clearly Finn McGuinness is someone that doesn't want the ball, so that makes it a bit challenging and a bit frustrating.
Salty much?
You're not happy with that, are you, as a Hawks
I'm
supporter?
not. Like, what is the difference between Finn McGuinness doing his job as a defensive midfielder and Stephen May locking down a forward and not letting the forward get a touch?
May gets the ball. May does get the ball.
Well, Finn actually had 13 touches of his own.
That's the greatest compliment Simon Goodwin could play, Finn McGuinness.
I am just
Take
absolutely...
it that way. Hear it that way.
It's just salty. You didn't need to say that.
You're salty that he's saying it.
I am. Let's move on now to Port Adelaide, because there were some magical moments from Jason Horne-Francis as the Power got up over the top of Fremantle. And I think we just forget too, this kid is still 20 in his second year, just like Nick Dacos.
Well, 20 in a June birthday, Nat.
Yeah.
So it's a relatively recent 20. And again, like Nick Dacos, in his second season, he didn't do a pre-season. He was banged up from his 1 year at North Melbourne. And now we're starting to see him actually coming to AFL type of conditioning without the pre-season behind him.
There's a lot of players who accumulate a lot of disposals in this game, but they don't really take you far. Whereas Jason Horne-Francis, every disposal counts, and that's why he'll be one of the most influential players over the next 15 years.
Yeah, certainly impacts the game, doesn't he? St Kilda is now locked into finals. Saints fans are absolutely overjoyed at the moment. They beat the Cats on Saturday night. Have we been sleeping on them a little bit? Because certainly when I kept doing the ladder predictor on afl.com.au, I did not have the Saints making it.
Marcus Windhager, we spoke to yesterday on the Sunday show, he said they just lost their scoring for a period. So they've always been good defensively, but they just lost their scoring profile, and they said they went to work, and they've actually picked that up. They kicked the 9 goals against the Hawks about 3 weeks ago, and they're dynamic, scintillating in every way against Geelong on Saturday night. So they do deserve to be there.
They won it with authority, didn't they?
Yeah.
And Rowan Marshall, we just saw take a big clunk and kick a goal. I feel he's had a patch of form that should have him in All-Australian conversation at the very least, and maybe even to overtake Tim English as that man.
Yeah, I'd be happy if he got the spot over Tim, yeah.
Do you think they can actually do some damage, though, come September?
Yeah, why not? I mean, they've done it all year. They're the one team that's basically stayed in there the whole way through. They've met the challenges. They've had their lulls. Every club has, but they've still worked their way through. And, I mean, Max King coming back unexpectedly after Ross Lyon himself ruled him out for the season. It's a key part of it. It's almost like a bonus for them, having access to him. Yeah.
Lloydie, just on the Cats, do you feel like it's the end of an era? And we are going to unpack them a little bit more in your exit lounge, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is because, and I understand why it would be, because when you're as successful as they've been, they just haven't been to the draft. They got generational players, I think, in Cameron and Dangerfield who've helped them stay for this long. Yep. Dangerfield's starting to struggle a little bit. Cameron's getting a bit banged up. Hawkins is close to retirement. It's the end of an era, but what an era it's been. Yeah,
it's been a terrific era indeed. What about Charlie Curnow? Because he is the biggest star for mine across the weekend. He was immense for the Blues. They don't win that game against the Suns without him. Is he currently the best player in the competition, Damo?
I'm happy for that to be the question you posed, Nat. Yes, is the answer. I mean, look at the score there. They're 40 points down. He single-handedly got them back into that game with 4 goals in that quarter, 5 for the game. You'll see in a moment what he did to save the game in the final 15 seconds when he was down the other end of the ground, and then also bring his great mate and fellow Coleman medalist Harry Mackay into it with a precise field kick. Yeah, he's the most dynamic player in the game, and it was a very important win in the context that where Carlton had been through this season to come back in that way, Lotto.
Yeah, no doubt. It was a great win by Carlton because they were flat. Here is Charlie behind the ball when it mattered most.
Amazing.
But yeah, you'd easily, if you have the whole competition on a wall, I think most people would pick him just in front of Bontempelli, probably.
Yep, I'd pick him first
Green,
for
Green,
sure.
Green.
Yep. To the Giants now, and they are on the cusp of a finals berth under first-year coach Adam Kingsley, and they absolutely blew Essendon out of the water. In fact, the Giants were throwing shade at the Bombers early, Lloydie, with their banner. But what did you make of it all? Look at this. It's
How many days, Nat? Get out of the way. Say it.
6,925 days since they last make finals. Sorry, Lloydie, but
Won a final.
won a final. Sorry. We'll chat about the Bombers in a moment. From a Giants perspective, they were red hot.
Well done to Adam Kingsley and what they have achieved in his first season. They are hard to score against. They've got their top 2 or 3 for defensive profile over the last 13 weeks since their turnaround has started, and then they're sort of fantastic with their ball movement, and they have superstars head of the ball led by Toby Green. So they kicked 7 goals, 3 to 1 goal straight. So here is Ash. So we want to highlight. So that's the great of the Giants. They were superb. They should be spoken about more, but it's this aspect of how bad the Bombers were. So this is McGrath, vice captain of the club, just couldn't go or didn't want to go with Ash in that situation. Then you get the young fella this was Draper, who was with Himmelberg. He didn't want to go. So Draper just lets Himmelberg, who we know can do that a lot, just let him go. And then this is Parrish on the mark. So he'll accumulate a lot, but do you want to defend for your life? No, he doesn't, like a lot of his teammates didn't on the weekend. I used the word insipid. It was an insipid performance, and here's that Whitfield who's let Parrish go. He's still drifting. So no, someone else take it.
Is it hard though when the score is 120 to 27?
But that's where your own individual pride comes in. Yes, you can lose confidence. I've lost my confidence a lot in my time where it can look like you're not trying. Yes, I've been there before, but you've just got to have a greater effort. I'm not sure they're hard enough on each other. OK,
we will get to the Bombers in just a moment in Lloydie's exit lounge, but Jack Riewoldt had his moment in his final game of his career, and I'm not quite sure what Ben Mackay was trying to claim here, that he'd touched it. If we see on the replay, he was a mile off it, Damo. I'm not sure what he was thinking.
No, I don't know. I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt to think that he at least thought he touched it, but he didn't.
It was way after that reaction.
Yeah.
Very delayed. So anyway, I'm glad Jack Riewoldt got that moment, and Ben Mackay probably looks like a little bit of a goose there. But anyway, good on him for trying. Time now to check into Lloydie's exit lounge. We've got 2 clubs in the gun this week. It is Essendon and Geelong. And Lloydie, let's start with the Bombers. What do they need to work on in the off-season?
Well, firstly, get a harder edge, Nat. So straight to the point, harden up. Absolutely harden up, because they played 3 quarters of a season. I loved their first 3 quarters. So it was fantastic. But since then, they've spoken about being tired, fatigued, and they've just fallen away with a dream draw to go on. They were 5th 5 weeks ago and just fallen apart. Move the ball more aggressively. So I think they are going to look at their back 6, back 7 and say, have we got good enough ball users, and are they willing to take the game on? And there was a game against Geelong at GMHBA Stadium which highlighted to me that they were just too safe. And Ridley's one of those players who's a good player, but it's a bit too safe at times. Jake Kelly's a bit safe. And they just don't want to go and attack the game on. So Geelong squeezed them. They had 28 entries in this game. I think they have to look at... I think they're going to go to the market or look at their own and say, who can we have off half-back to be more aggressive with the footy? So that was number 2. And no more we are building talk. You just mentioned how many days. And it is frustrating because everyone's young, got young talent in there, but you still shouldn't be an excuse for not playing.
You were complimentary of David Barham coming in last year and humiliating, well, it's my word, Ben Rutten as coach when he basically made him coach the last game, then sacked him, and then he promised and pledged change, and ultimately we get down the track and not much has changed, Lordo. I know there's been a footy operations boss now no longer there in Josh Marnie, but Kevin Sheedy's still there on the board and other disruptors remain.
Yeah, I still think they did the right thing, and I thought for 17 weeks I saw change, and I saw a team that I respected and I trusted for 17 weeks, but I can't believe how it's fallen away since then.
All right, what about the Cats, the Premier not making finals this season? What do they need to do?
Yeah, so I think it's about the draft and getting access. So they've got their first pick is pick 8, but then the next pick after that is pick 80.
Yeah.
So that's just not enough. So is there a player they can get out and look at to bolster their draft hand, which I think has to happen. Number 2, Damo, get in an A-grade ruckman. So forever it's been Reece Stanley. He's done his best, but it's just not quite good enough.
It worked last year in the end.
Yeah.
He came through in the finals, but it wasn't enough. They explored the Brodie Grundy possibility this time last year. Do they revisit that?
I would now maybe going back. They might not. They've got young Toby Conway, a young ruckman that they drafted.
They keep talking him up.
But he'll need maybe not this time because they're going back in a sense, and draft a young key forward as well. So I think that Shannon Neal isn't quite there, and then Hawkins. He's got a year left of his career, and then obviously Jeremy Cameron needs support as well. So a lot of holes now in that Geelong team, but there should be with what they've achieved. All
right, stay tuned for more Lloydie's Exit Lounge next week. Now, this man right here is our crypto bold play of the week, and you can't get bolder than Dev Robinson, the young lion, who I think he actually enjoyed getting his rig out, Damo.
Well, Nat, I've been told he's a very shy character and doesn't like any form of publicity, and yet the actions like that, and the throwing away of the jumper, and then the strut around. The last time I saw someone strut with their top off that long on any given public forum was this man next to us who celebrated a cricket final with his top off at the start of the year. But you must be happy with that, Lord. You are a vague man. You'd be happy with that.
If you've got it, you've flown it. No, I'm all in on that.
Well, so Dev Robertson's Instagram followers have nearly quadrupled.
Oh, yeah.
Did yours get a little uptick after your shirt
get a
off?
bit of a spike.
Oh, God. And finally, speaking of youngsters, a couple that probably need to lift, the kids running out with their dads for milestone games, and it's fair to say this magical moment for Will Hoskin-Elliott was ruined by his young son not wanting to go anywhere near the banner, and even Jackie D's chimed in and tried to convince the young fella, and he couldn't even get up. But this is my favourite, Damo. Poor George.
It's a beautiful moment, but poor old George is not happy. He just does not want to bar a Big Maxie's 200th, and I heard Maxie say that he's somehow an introvert. He doesn't know where he gets that from, given his own extroverted ways.
Did any of your kids do that, Lloydie?
I took my daughter out for my 250th, but she handled it well.
Oh, she handled it better than young George. He is really cute, so that's totally okay. We forgive him. Very, very funny stuff. All right, that is all we have time for on Axos All Areas this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next Monday with plenty more.